Okay, let's unpack this. If you look around, I mean, armed conflicts, health crises, economic stuff, social division,
Hmm.
it definitely feels like we're living in a world facing, well, some significant challenges. It can be pretty overwhelming.
It absolutely can, yeah. And these aren't just, headlines. They're pressures impacting people's daily lives, like on a massive scale.
Yeah.
And that can lead to feeling adrift, maybe even a bit numb emotionally, which is something the source we're looking at points out.
Right. And that feeling, that shock or hopelessness, it's understandable, but it's not really the end of the story,
Hmm.
at least according to the material you've brought us for this deep dive.
No, exactly. The source we're exploring today, it's excerpts from the July-August 2022 Awake magazine, published by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, which is associated with Jehovah's Witnesses. It dives right into that feeling. It acknowledges the global turmoil, everything from epidemics and natural disasters to poverty and prejudice, but then it pivots.
Okay, so it moves from just acknowledging the problem to emphasizing like the need for decisive action. It's less about analyzing the problems themselves
Right.
and more about how you as an individual
Yeah.
can cope and maybe minimize the effect of all that turmoil on yourself and, your loved ones.
Precisely. The magazine, it highlights those common reactions like shock and hopelessness, but it really stresses that you can't just stay there. You need to take steps. And it kind of boils those steps down into 4 key areas.
4 pillars, maybe,
Yeah.
for navigating these difficult times,
Yes.
according to this source. So protecting your health,
Your
your
livelihood
relationships. Yeah,
and your hope.
exactly. Those are the areas the magazine really focuses on for building resilience, I guess, in the face of these global issues.
Okay, let's jump right into the first one then. Protecting your health. Why start there? When everything feels like it's falling apart externally, why zero in on your physical state?
Well, the source makes a really strong case for health being foundational. It points out that adversity, it causes stress,
Yeah.
right? And stress weakens your body, makes you more prone to getting sick.
Plus, crises often strain healthcare systems, so it's harder to get help when you need it. And, financial pressures can limit access to good food or necessary care.
So stress hits you,
Oh.
healthcare gets harder to access, and staying healthy might get more expensive.
Wow, sounds like a bit of a vicious cycle.
It can be.
What's the key understanding then that the source offers about this connection between health and crisis?
Well, it highlights that serious illness or just prolonged stress can actually impair your judgment. When you're run down or worried sick, you're maybe less likely to stick to healthy habits,
Right.
which just makes things worse. Untreated problems can escalate, dramatically. The core idea seems to be the healthier you can manage to be, the better your capacity is to make sound decisions and handle the other stuff the crisis throws at you.
Okay.
And importantly, it stresses that taking steps for your health is possible pretty much regardless of your financial situation.
That's a crucial point, that you still have some agency, even in tough times. So what are the practical, tangible steps the magazine suggests? It starts with the basics, actually, but frames it in kind of an insightful way. Practice good hygiene. It actually links this to a principle found in Proverbs 22.3. The shrewd one sees the danger and conceals himself.
Huh. Using ancient wisdom to talk about washing your hands, that's an
Yeah.
interesting angle.
It is, isn't it? It kind of elevates simple acts, frequent hand washing, cleaning surfaces at home, avoiding close contact with sick people elevates them into a form of protective shrewdness, actively avoiding danger.
Hmm?
The source even includes a quote from someone named Andreas who saw this connection directly. He said cleanliness helped him save on medical expenses.
Connecting cleanliness to cost savings. That makes a lot of sense, especially when livelihood is also under pressure. Okay, what's the next practical health step?
Maintaining a healthy diet. Here the magazine references Ephesians 5.29, stating, "No man ever hated his own body, but he feeds and cherishes it." So the idea isn't about perfection, but about prioritizing, fueling your body right.
And what does that look like practically, according to
Yeah.
the source?
Well, drinking enough water, eating a variety of fruits and vegetables when you can, limiting things that aren't great for you, excessive fats, salt, sugar. It also includes avoiding tobacco and the abuse of alcohol or drugs.
Right.
There's another quote from Carlos, who apparently views investing in a good diet as a way to avoid spending his limited income on medical bills down the road.
So making conscious choices about what you put into your body makes sense.
Yeah.
And the third practical area for health.
Get exercise and enough rest. This one uses a quote from Ecclesiastes 4.6. Better is a handful of rest than 2 handfuls of hard work and chasing after the wind. It frames rest as this necessary balance alongside hard work.
Rest is definitely essential for coping with stress.
Exactly. Staying physically active, even just regular walks, are suggested as a starting point is recommended. And prioritizing sleep is key because, well, not enough rest dramatically increases stress. It hurts your concentration short term
Yeah.
and can lead to more serious health issues long term.
They offer specific tips for sleep too, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Like setting a realistic bedtime and trying to stick to it, that's a
Yeah.
big one. And avoiding things that interfere with sleep, like, screens, heavy meals, caffeine, alcohol right before bed.
The usual suspects.
Pretty much. The magazine includes a quote from someone named Justin, who observed that getting enough sleep just fundamentally impacts his energy and his ability to function well day to day.
It really does all link together, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And the source points to some additional resources on jw.org related to health.
it does, yeah. It mentions a video called Virus Outbreaks What You Can Do and an article Ways to Improve Your Health.
Okay, so establishing that foundation of health is point one. Moving beyond your personal physical state, let's look at the second area, protecting your livelihood. Why does the magazine put such a strong emphasis on, well, finances and making ends meet during global turmoil?
Because these are precisely the times when your livelihood is most threatened, right? Crises often mean rising costs for essentials, job losses, or maybe reduced wages, potential damage, or loss of property.
Yeah.
It directly impacts your ability to provide for yourself and your family. It's a very real, immediate pressure.
Absolutely. So what does the source emphasize about managing your livelihood in these conditions?
Well, it acknowledges that good financial management is obviously helpful during a crisis, but it also adds this layer of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Financial security isn't really permanent. Income, savings, asset values, they can all be pretty volatile.
Sure.
So the magazine makes this crucial point that money itself can't buy happiness or family unity. It reinforces that something else is actually more valuable.
And that brings us to a key idea from the source, doesn't it? Contentment.
Yes, exactly. Being content is presented as absolutely essential. It quotes 1 Timothy 6.8. Having food and clothing, we will be content with these things. So the focus shifts to limiting wants and finding satisfaction when your basic daily needs are met, especially when income is unstable.
Hmm.
It acknowledges that you might need to adjust your lifestyle if maybe you've been living beyond your means.
Adjusting expectations to match reality. That can be challenging, but it's practical. Okay, what's the next concrete step for livelihood?
Make a budget. The source quotes Proverbs 21.5 here. The plans of the diligent surely lead to success, but all who are hasty surely head for poverty. So creating a clear picture of income versus expenses that's framed as diligence.
And that helps you see where the money is actually going, right?
Exactly. It lets you identify areas where you can maybe reduce or even eliminate spending. The quote from Carlos, the one we heard from earlier about diet.
Yeah.
He also mentions how budgeting and having even a small emergency fund, it reduced his anxiety because they actually had a plan for their income.
Reduces that uncertainty.
Yeah.
What else does the source suggest for reducing financial pressure?
Well, reducing expenses generally. This includes practical suggestions like maybe delaying non-essential purchases or upgrades, carefully considering if something is truly needed and affordable before you buy it.
Thinking twice.
Yeah. It also mentions potentially doing without things like a second vehicle or exploring options like planting a garden to cut down food costs. And it adds, don't hesitate to apply for government or humanitarian assistance if it's available and you qualify.
Those concrete examples are helpful, like the quote from Gift, whose family cut back on recreation costs and started making simpler, cheaper meals at home.
Yes, those small adjustments, they can really add up. Another related point is avoiding debt and trying to save, even a little. Having a clear plan to reduce or avoid debt is seen as crucial. Saving up for purchases instead of relying on credit. Setting aside even small amounts monthly for unexpected future expenses.
Building that small cushion, that buffer.
Yeah.
And the final aspect of livelihood the source addresses.
Work. Yeah, the emphasis is on working hard and being diligent to, maintain employment if you have it. Proverbs 14.23 is quoted, "There is benefit in every kind of hard work." So maintaining a good attitude about your job, even if it's not your ideal one, is important for income. And being dependable and industrious, that also makes it easier to keep a job or find a new one if you need to.
Right. Like Dimitri's quote illustrates this, how he took available jobs even if he didn't love them, but always aimed to do quality work. What about if you're actively looking for work during a crisis? Any tips there?
Yeah, the source suggests taking initiative. Contact businesses directly, let friends and family know you're looking, and being adaptable is key. You might not find a job that checks every single box, so being willing to take something that helps make ends meet is part of the strategy.
Being realistic.
Exactly. The magazine also points to an article called How to Live on Less on jw.org for more ideas.
Okay, so we've looked at protecting your personal foundation health and your financial ground livelihood.
Yeah.
Next up is the third area, protecting your relationships. Why do connections with other people become so critical when the world feels unstable?
Well, because turmoil and the anxiety it brings can really, really strain those bonds. People might withdraw from friends. The pressure on a marriage can cause partners to become maybe more contentious.
Yeah, I can see that.
And parents might be so stressed themselves that they kind of overlook or don't adequately address their children's anxieties about what's happening in the world.
So it's easy for those essential support systems to get damaged just when you need them the most. The source underlines that, yeah, friendships are vital for stability and well-being, family life gets tested by stress, and kids are often deeply affected by disturbing news, even if they don't always show it outwardly.
Exactly. So the practical steps here are really about intentionally maintaining and strengthening those bonds. First, maintain friendships. The magazine quotes Proverbs 17:1. A true friend shows love at all times and is a brother who is born for times of distress.
That paints a picture of friendship as support specifically for the tough times, doesn't it?
It really does. The source encourages reaching out to friends regularly, maybe asking how they're coping with similar challenges, and actively giving support as well as receiving it. It makes the point that helping others actually strengthens you in return. There's a quote from Nicole highlighting the value of friends as a point of reference during adversity, just reminding you that you're not alone, that someone genuinely cares.
Knowing someone cares really can make a huge difference. What about within the family, specifically marriage?
Strengthen your marriage, yeah. The source quotes Ecclesiastes 4.9 and 10. Two are better than one, for if one of them falls, the other can help his partner up. It's framed very much as a partnership. The advice includes consciously resolving not to take stress out on each other.
Which is hard when everyone's stressed.
It is hard, which is why the suggestion is to actively resolve to do it, cultivating patience and tolerance. It also advises setting aside time, maybe weekly, to discuss issues, but making sure you target the problem, not blame the person.
Focus on the issue, not the individual.
Right. And importantly, make time for enjoyable activities together. Even simple things like reminiscing about good times or looking at old photos. David's quote mentions that even when a couple doesn't agree on everything, they can still choose to work as a team.
Focusing on teamwork through the challenges. Okay. And what about supporting children?
Be a supportive parent. Here, the source quotes James 1.19. Be quick to listen, slow to speak. It emphasizes patient listening, helping children express their fears and concerns, creating a comfortable, low-pressure environment for them to talk maybe while you're walking together or driving, not necessarily a formal face-to-face sit-down.
Letting them open up at their own
Yeah,
pace.
yes. Also crucial is limiting their exposure to overly disturbing news reports. Let them know in an age-appropriate way what steps you are taking to keep the family safe. And maybe even rehearse an emergency plan with them.
Give them some sense of control or predictability.
Exactly. Bethany is quoted sharing how she talks to her kids about feelings, even admitting her own struggles sometimes, and shares how she deals with those difficult emotions.
Modeling healthy coping for them. That's important. The source also mentions the jw.org video, Your Family Can Be Happy, as a related resource here.
Which brings us then to the fourth and final key area the magazine focuses on for coping with turmoil: protecting your hope.
And this feels, well, incredibly significant. When everything is chaotic and uncertain, why is hope presented as such an essential ingredient?
Because anxiety without hope is just debilitating, isn't it? The source notes that a lack of hope can lead people to avoid thinking about the future altogether, maybe turn to harmful escapes like substance abuse, or even tragically conclude that there's no point in living. That why go on question can really arise.
It's the counterbalance to that initial feeling of hopelessness the source mentioned right at the start.
Yeah.
So what does the magazine want us to understand about hope?
It offers a few key points. First, it reminds us that some problems are temporary. Situations can change, sometimes unexpectedly. Second, even if the external situation doesn't change right away, the actions you take can help you cope with it better.
Okay.
But the deepest layer of hope the source presents is that the Bible offers genuine, permanent hope for the future.
Looking beyond the immediate circumstances, before we get fully into the Bible's role, what are the practical kind of day-to-day steps suggested for maintaining hope?
Well, first, taking one day at a time. The source quotes Matthew 6.34. Never be anxious about the next day, for the next day will have its own anxieties. Each day has enough of its own troubles. The idea is really to focus on today's responsibilities. Don't let anxiety about tomorrow paralyze you today.
Right.
Worrying excessively about all the negative possibilities just adds stress and, well, it weakens hope.
Breaking it down into manageable chunks. What else?
Focusing on the positive. Proverbs 15.14 is quoted here. All the days of the afflicted one are bad, but the one with a cheerful heart has a continual feast. The magazine explains that a negative outlook can kind of blind you to solutions, whereas a positive attitude helps you actively find ways to deal.
Okay, and how do you do that practically?
Practical suggestions include limiting your time and attention on negative news reports, maybe making a daily list of things you're thankful for, and creating a daily to-do list, even breaking down larger tasks so you can see results and feel a sense of accomplishment.
Those small wins can build momentum and shift your perspective.
Mhm.
Definitely. And the final practical step for finding hope.
Get support. The source quotes Proverbs 18.1. Whoever isolates himself rejects all practical wisdom. It really stresses that you generally need help to navigate difficult situations. Reach out to friends and family. And similar to the point about relationships, actively look for ways to help others. This helps keep your own problems in perspective, and it fosters a sense of connection and purpose.
Helping others helps yourself. That's a recurring theme. The force also includes a cultural practical note here too, doesn't it? About professional help.
Yes, it does. It advises that if you're feeling truly overwhelmed or profoundly hopeless, it's important to consider getting a medical checkup. These feelings could be symptoms of a health condition, like depression. And while the source doesn't endorse specific treatments, it does note that many people have been helped by treatment.
So it's a balance point, recognizing when professional help might be needed.
Exactly. It's an important clarification.
Okay, now let's turn to the source's core message about the Bible providing hope. How does it frame that?
It describes the Bible using a quote from Psalm 119.105, calling it a lamp to my foot and a light for my path. That metaphor seems key. Like a lamp on a dark night, it's presented as offering practical wisdom to guide your decisions today.
Okay, guidance for now.
And like a light shining further down a path, it illuminates the future, providing a perspective that extends beyond the current turmoil.
So it offers both present guidance and a future outlook.
Yep.
And the source says the Bible answers some pretty fundamental questions about suffering.
Yes, it specifically highlights questions like, how did suffering even begin? It quotes Romans 5.12, stating, through one man sin entered into the world, and death through sin. That's presented as the source's explanation for the origin of suffering.
Tracing it back to a specific origin point in human history, what about the question of why human efforts haven't really fixed things globally?
Well, the source quotes Jeremiah 10.23, which states, it does not belong to man who is walking even to direct his step, and then it adds that a look at the world scene confirms that fact. So this presents human rule as fundamentally incapable of solving the world's big problems, which kind of aligns with that initial picture of global turmoil we discussed.
Right, it links the Bible's perspective directly to the current state of the world as the source sees it. And finally, what does the source say God will do about all this suffering?
It provides the Bible's answer from Revelation 21.4, describing a future where God will wipe out every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more, neither will mourning nor outcry nor pain be any more. This is really presented as the core of the permanent hope the Bible offers, a future completely free from the very things causing so much suffering right now.
A promise of a complete end to the problems we started this deep dive discussing.
Wow.
The source also points to resources on jw.org for anyone interested in learning more, like the video Why Study the Bible and a brochure called Enjoy Life Forever, Introductory Bible Lessons.
It really seems to bring the practical advice for coping today together with that long-term perspective based on what the magazine presents as the Bible's promises for the future.
So just to recap this deep dive into the insights from these Awake magazine excerpts, we've explored a framework for navigating world turmoil built around 4 key areas: protecting your health through practical steps like hygiene, diet, exercise, rest; protecting your livelihood by fostering contentment, budgeting, reducing expenses, avoiding debt, being diligent in work;
Protecting your relationships. Yeah, actively maintaining friendships, strengthening your marriage, being a supportive parent.
and critically, protecting your hope by focusing on one day at a time, finding the positive, seeking support, and looking to the future promises described in the Bible according to this source.
These points, according to the magazine, offer concrete actions you can take to kind of push back against those feelings of shock and hopelessness and build resilience for yourself and your loved ones.
You've aimed to really distill the core knowledge from this specific source material, hopefully equipping you with its perspective on coping with these challenging times.
Yes. And as the magazine concludes by highlighting that future described in Revelation 21.4, a world without mourning or outcry or pain, it really leaves us with a thought to consider. What might it actually feel like, truly, to live in a world where those experiences just don't exist anymore?
Hmm.
And how might reflecting on that possibility, even just for a moment, potentially shift your perspective or maybe your approach to the challenges you're facing today?
Something to really consider.